This is the President McCormack Podcast with your host, Mark McCormack.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, David McGreary. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, happy to be here.
I like my introductions short and sweet.
Yeah, jump right in.
Yeah,
that's kind of your style, though, right? Yeah. Like, you're going to kick the door down like the Kool-Aid man and just like, I'm here, let's go.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was years ago I realized it's just, why wait? Go after everything, make it happen quick.
Yeah, so I think that's definitely your style.
So, again, thanks for coming on the podcast. I've been super excited. You were one of my first guests I wanted to have on here. So, and at the time you were working for Bacardi.
That's right.
When I first started this, and now, tell us what you're doing now.
Doing a lot right now. So, have recently left Bacardi. Great company, a lot of great friends there. Really enjoyed my time working with Bacardi. But I think as we put it in my exit interview from the company, that my ambitions had grown a little bit bigger than the company could offer at the time. It's really an interesting piece, right? Being with a global company through the pandemic and seeing the shift in the way things were being done, it really gave us the opportunity to move back close to home, and which was really important to me. I wanted my kids to grow up knowing your kids the way we all grew up together, right? Like cousins, but kind of grew up in a tight-knit, almost brotherly fashion, and I wanted to provide that for my boys as well. And it wasn't really part of the plan to leave Bacardi until we moved back here. And we had just moved into our home, right? Rented a house from your brother for a few months while we finished building our house. And I don't know that I had even made the first mortgage payment yet. And I get a call from my boss, and he says, "Hey, we're going to restructure some things. We want you to take on a much bigger role. We want to get you to GM level, and we're going to have you move to Detroit." I was like, okay. It was a bit hard on my kids, leaving all their friends in Oregon and coming back here. And then I was like, how am I going to go home and sell this to Sherry, Connor, and Grayson that, hey, guess what? Pack your bags again. We're moving to Detroit. So I'm like, not going to do that. So that's when I realized it was time to start planning the next step. So in that, right, we had been talking about a lot of things for a long time, right? Even when I was living in Portland, we'd been talking about, like, what do we do in this spirits game? What can we, legacy project, build something that we can, leave for the family after, we've moved on from here and all this. And I remember we were playing poker down at Brett's house. And afterwards, I believe I won that night too, so that was kind of nice.
That's probably true.
We're back out in the driveway, and we just started kind of spitballing. And that, I think, at that moment is where the idea and the concept came up for what eventually is become our free flow brands concept. So it was that moment of, hey, we're going to spin this thing up. It's time to make some moves. In kind of parallel to that, started a contracting company with my lifelong buddy Chris, who pretty well, wood and steel contracting, which gives me that nice creative outlet, back to drawing again, designing plans, getting ready to work on a project for you at your house that will be a bit of a crown jewel for what our company has done so far. So it was really putting the pieces in place to make the exit out of the corporate world and come over and into the private world and do some more fun things with you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's funny. I when I first started getting interested in spirits, I was really Mormon. If you remember, you were living up in Sandy, and people always it was funny because I would talk to people who would drink, and I would talk to them about brands and like how it's made and like what the difference between a Scotch whiskey is and a bourbon whiskey and a tequila. And they were always like, "Oh, I didn't know you were a drinker." And I'm like, "Oh, no, I've never had it in my life." They're like, "How do you know this stuff?" And I'm like, "Oh, my cousin David."
Oh, yeah. I mean, when you developed your interest in that, holy cow, did you pepper me with questions? Like, man, Mark wants to know all of this, and he doesn't even imbibe.
Yeah.
What's he going to do with this?
I don't even know why. I think in my 20s, I got really, really interested in the manufacturing process, right? Family business, manufacturing, basketball hoops and, welding and, all the stuff that comes along with that, raw materials to finished goods, A to Z. So I used to watch like videos online about manufacturing plants, and a lot of times they go to food. Well, then food goes to beverage, and then beverages go straight to spirits, and you start looking at these massive, massive manufacturing plants.
Massive.
What's the vodka like in Sweden?
You've got Absolute vodka.
I think it's actually Absolute.
Yep.
So Absolute was the one where I watched. I think they have like a 55-minute long YouTube video of like their entire manufacturing process, and it is just so intriguing to me.
Oh, it's amazing. So, throughout my career, I'm sure we'll dive into where I've been and all that. But, I have represented Absolute in my time. And, their manufacturing facility is unreal, state of the art. All of the goods that they need to produce their finished goods come from within 30 miles of the distillery. So efficiently run. It only takes like 6 people to run that building to produce all of the Absolute vodka that's sold in the world every day.
Which is insane.
Absolutely insane. Yeah. And they jumped right into the just-in-time ordering for all of their supply chain and all of these things. And there's just so many efficiencies to that model that they have really, followed in Toyota's footsteps on that. And, they do a really good job with it.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
One thing I liked watching with it is they have this part where the bottles are just flying down a line, right? And then all of a sudden a hammer comes out of nowhere and just knocks a bottle out. And when they've got to be. It's so like I feel like you can't blink while you watch it. They're moving that fast, and they're shooting an infrared camera. And if there's any impurities, dude, a little like mallet literally just comes out, and the bottle just flies out of nowhere. And I was always like, dude, that is so crazy. It's like it's simple, but at the same time, it's like, oh, that's cool.
Well, the speed that it happens at is like, there's some serious the engineering just in the backside to make the plant work is probably just as cool as what the plant actually does.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's also cool too because there's so many different countries involved. Spirits is really an interesting thing. Like you can share different spirits from all over the world, and I actually love the fact that America has bourbon.
Yeah.
It's not every country has their thing, but Mexico's got tequila, Scotland's got scotch. You know what I mean? I guess vodka's everywhere, but Russians like to claim it, right?
Yeah, I think that they like to consume it the most, right? It's a piece of daily life, just vodka in the raw form, right? Here we consume vodka as just an ingredient in a drink, right? For the most part.
Yeah, they sip it, right?
Oh yeah. Part of meals, part of all of it. Right? Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, and then I remember one of your big browns was always Grey Goose.
Yep.
So you gotta remind me his name. Grey Goose guy and the Jägermeister guy.
So Sidney Frank.
Sidney Frank, that's right.
Yep. Yeah, Sidney Frank was the one, essentially captured lightning in a bottle twice, right? Yeah. And all of these other top shelf premium vodkas should tip the hat a little bit to him, because before that nobody was paying over $20 for vodka, and he has this wild idea and makes it happen. Much like the President McCormack over here, find an idea and make it happen. But that's what Sidney did. Yeah. And he was able to get Francois Thibault, who had been making cognac his whole life, to come over and produce this vodka for him, with the idea that we were going to make the best vodka the world had ever seen, and we're going to sell it for a price point that nobody's ever heard of. And they did it. And ultimately, Bacardi family bought the Grey Goose brand from Sidney Frank Importing Company, and it's become a global icon from that point on, right? Great marketing behind the brand, great liquid in the bottle. Pretty cool story.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Francois is still on board, making the product. And it's interesting, when I got to meet Francois, he's obviously can communicate with you in English, but it's very broken up French English, right? But he'll tell you everything in the bottle from Grey Goose is produced in France, from France, right? and with exception of the Grey Goose orange, like the oranges in France are not good. So I'm going to get the oranges from the best place to get oranges. So the orange comes from Florida for Grey Goose l'Orange, but everything else, right? So Francois is that guy that I'm not going to cut any corners. I'm best ingredients. I don't care how I have to source them. That's what it's going to be. And so he admitted I guess the French oranges are gross.
Well, it makes sense. They got other good things over there.
Yeah.
I'm glad you picked Florida, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Little tip of the hat to America. Yeah. So did Bacardi buy Jägermeister as well?
No.
So who owns
just
that?
Grey Goose. Mass Jägermeister.
Okay.
So still a spin-off from what the Sidney Frank Importing Company originally was. Now it's Mass Jägermeister. So they've got, I believe they've got the contract with Dwayne Johnson's Terramana Tequila, right? So they're the wholesaler and wholesaler supplier partner to all the brokers and distributors here in the States. Few other brands. I'm not totally up to speed on their whole portfolio. Good friend of mine, Morgan, was he worked there for a long time. Great company. Interesting stuff. But they've really put their marketing machine back behind the Jaeger brand, right? Like, I feel like there was a little bit of a gap in Jaeger's history, right? My generation, we grew up on Jaeger shots, right? Like, that's what we did. And I think that maybe Jaeger lost their mojo a little bit. And, so just turned 42, right? And I think the kids that are just turning 30 never drank Jaeger. So they're trying to capture that segment of the market again, right? You have to stay relevant or your brand dies. And
yeah, it seems like they're jumping in the cold brew mix, right? That's kind of their jam right now.
Yeah, which interesting. I tried all of their new stuff at down in Phoenix last May for the NABCA convention, and they've got some interesting stuff coming out. Great flavorful cocktails. Like they're getting really creative with Jaeger as the base ingredient in cocktail strategy, which, it's interesting. Jaeger Bloody Mary is actually pretty good.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I wish I liked Bloody Marys. They look appetizing, but I hate tomato juice.
Oh, man.
So, I've been around some people at the pool where they're drinking some, they got a big bacon strip in there, and I'm always like, that looks tasty.
Yeah, that gets you right in the morning, Bloody Mary.
So walk us through your career a little bit then, Dave.
All right. So, this has kind of been what I've done since I turned 21, right? Initially started out with Carlson Distributing Company in Salt Lake City. One of my lifelong buddies, you know him well too, James Chittister. His father was working down there and had been at the distributor from, before it was Carlson Distributing all the way through, and turned 21. And about the moment I stopped being hungover from that, I wanted to do something different. I was right out of high school, started, working for a company that put new carpet in Mormon churches, right? And we were traveling all over the place, tearing carpet out of churches and gluing new carpet down, which was fun in the beginning because I was doing it with some buddies, but realized like this is going to destroy my body and ultimately this is not what I want to do. Yeah. So I turned 21, I'm like going to school part-time, and like I'm going to go and drive a beer truck, right? So they hire me on. 3 days later, I have a Class A CDL, which was mind-blowing to me that's how easy it was. They put me in a beer truck, and I started delivering beer, down here in Utah County. And I was very shocked by the fact that we actually sent 3 trucks full of beer every day to Utah County. I was like, wait a minute, those folks don't drink down there. Well, it turns out that they do, right? So started in the beer delivery game. Quickly, my skill set was recognized and elevated from delivering beer to selling beer to bars and restaurants in Park City, right around the time the Winter Olympics were coming to town. So it was really like trial by fire, definitely drinking through a hose at this point. Like the whole world's coming to your backyard, and here you are, this 21-year-old kid that it's your responsibility to make sure these bars don't run out of beer, right? So worked my way through that, ultimately into running their on-premise sales program. And I guess about the time I turned 26, I had, Sherry and I had been married for about a year. Connor is, in Sherry's belly at this point. And I really wanted to do more than what I could do at Carlson. And I get a call one day from this guy named Seth Roberts. He was running the state of Utah for Young's Market Company at the time. And they had an opening for an on-premise spirit sales rep, and my name had come up in conversation a few times. So I take an interview with Seth, instantly hit it off with him. He's one of my mentors now. Love the guy, great dude. He works for Pernod Ricard now, runs Arizona, New Mexico for them. I think he may have just gotten a bit of a promotion there. I think he might have Washington and Alaska in his book now. But so went over, worked with Seth, and it was a fun time. All of a sudden, I developed a newfound love for what I was doing, really began to get interested in the spirits business as a whole and how you make that, into a real career and truly profitable for yourself. Just like I said, I loved it. Then Seth leaves the company, right? He gets a job with Pernod Ricard. And so we go from Seth being my boss to kind of being my partner in the business. And that's really where the mentorship part of our relationship came into play, as, he had done all the things that right now I was aspiring to accomplish. So I really latched on to, the way Seth conducted himself in business meetings and, interactions with the state of Utah, right? Like that's a big function of what I do every day is massaging relationships and keeping people happy, both at the state of Utah's liquor division and then all of my supplier partners at the time. So things kind of get rolling again. I get a new boss in at Young's Market Company. All is great, and we're just making things happen. Then Pernod Ricard buys Absolute. And I can't remember. I think they bought it. It's either $4 or $5 billion is what they spent. It was the largest spirits transaction ever, right? The biggest acquisition in the industry's history. And in that, they put on a direct sales force to just sell Absolute while they kind of figured out what they were going to do. Because in the meantime, they had Stoli vodka is their vodka in their portfolio, but it was an agency brand for them. They just represented them. They didn't own it, right? And so Absolute was the option to own something outright. So they divest out of the Stoli piece, and then ultimately they pull their whole product line from Young's Market Company. And they award it to what is now Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits. At the time, it was a conglomerate of some smaller Pacific Northwest brokerages that had been gobbled up, and Southern went on a tear there for a while of buying out these small brokerage houses. And in that transition, Pernod Ricard asked Southern Glazers to essentially go poach me from Young's Market. They wanted me to come over and run the business for them, which I was happy to do. Right, your mentor's going over there. I know the brands like the back of my hand. So I jumped at the chance. And that really, at that point, I was running the state of Utah as the general manager for Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits. So I went from, having my area of responsibility being the bars and restaurants that were under my repertoire to now running the business for, at any given moment, 60 to 65 different spirit suppliers that all had, 60 to 65 different agendas and things that needed to be accomplished. Plus I had to greenfield the whole team, right? We had no salespeople. Everybody that was already at Southern, they moved over and they were going to sell the Diageo brands specifically. So we spin up a sales team. Was very fortunate to get a couple of home run hitters right off the bat, and we just went on a tear, man. We were a very high performing, small and nimble team, but we started stacking up the trophy cabinet, right? Like corporate America, huge on trophies, right? And it got to the point where it was like, what do we do with all of these things? Because we were broker of the year for Pernod, broker of the year for Patron, broker of the year for Beam. I mean, it just kept going and going and going. So with that success comes just like, transition it into college football, right? You win the national championship, and then all of your coordinators get picked off to go be, head coaches somewhere else. Well, that's what started to happen on us too, right? Like I was asked to move up to Oregon and run the business. One of my guys, he moved on and started his own restaurant group that they're very successful here in town now. And things just kind of, it was good for everyone for a long time. So I go home to Sherry and I tell Sherry, I said, hey, Southern is wanting me to move up to Oregon and run the business up there for them, which from a scale point, the business in Oregon is about 10 times what we do here in Utah in a year. So, bigger budget to be responsible for, bigger opportunities, bigger stage to show your talents on. The caveat was, at the time, Sherry was crushing it in commercial real estate, right? Like doubling my income level. But we had, at this point, Connor was in kindergarten and Grayson was about to turn 3. And it's, we wanted to make the shift to where Sherry could be home when they get home from school and do all of that. So, we rolled the dice and walked away from her. Like at the time, it was hard, right? She was probably pulling in double what I was pulling in, and like we're going from 2 incomes to 1 and moving up to Oregon. But we decided to do it, and it ultimately turned out to be the best thing we did for our relationship. That woman, once she puts up with my bullshit, right? Like I'm not the easiest, but moving up there and having no one as your support group, right? It's like, if something's going to happen, it either had to happen from Sherry or myself, right? Yeah. And having gone through that now, I think we could pick up and have to move to Japan, and like our relationship is so solid, and what we really it just builds the partnership with your spouse, or in this instance, I mean, Sherry's my spouse, but she's my partner in every decision that we make and all of that. And so that was great. Little stressful when we first moved up there. They were dealing with real estate like what we've seen here in Utah over the last couple of years, right? Like a house would be on the market and it was sold by the end of the day. Right. So we sold our home here, and I'm trying to buy a house, and everything I go look at has got like 20 offers over asking price. And just like, shit, we might not be able to buy a house. It's like, this was not part of the plan. So Sherry calls me. I was at this point, I'm commuting back and forth. So I'm still technically running the business here in Utah for Southern and running up in Oregon while we look for a replacement for me here. And Sherry calls me one day and she's like, hey, before you go to the airport tonight, I want you to go look at this house. I found it on Zillow, Make Me Move. Right? Like, right. Okay. So I go and I look at this house, and it was one of the nicer homes that we had looked at. And I'm like, I know this will work. I'm afraid that if I don't make an offer right now, they may full on list this thing and it'll be in a bidding war and I won't be able to buy it. So you want to really test yourself. You go ahead and buy a house for you and your wife to move into without your wife ever seeing it.
Right.
Yeah. Like that was some big time, like, oh man, this could go bad. Right. So I offer, they accept, so I'm ecstatic. And then it's like, oh, by the way, yeah, I saw that house. She's like, what'd you think? I'm like, I bought it. She's like, you did what? I'm like, yeah, I bought it. I think it's going to be great. And ultimately it was. Like we loved living in the house, and I felt like a real estate genius because it doubled in value while we lived there. So I was like, man, I got this figured out. This is great. But
well, your neighborhood was dope too, right?
Loved the neighborhood. Actually, so we lived in Wilsonville, Oregon, and it's funny now. I find myself sometimes referring to like back home as Wilsonville, right? So, and a lot of that is because I've watched our kids go from, just being little kids to, young Connor, 15, just got his learner's permit, which is a whole different, he's doing awesome, but it's a little hard to sit in the passenger seat, but he's doing great. But while we lived in Wilsonville, there were a lot of formative things in our kids' lives. And, we had a network of friends. It felt like a community, right? We're living in Riverton right now, zero community feel in Riverton, right? So it's the neighborhood, yeah. Sometimes a little bit too friendly, right? Like a little bit too many people in everyone else's business, and maybe even further than just in one another's business. There was some shenanigans in that town for sure, but a lot of fun. I coached both boys in football and lacrosse up there, which I absolutely loved. You're coaching Nixon right now. Like, it's one of the best feelings. You're out there passing on something I love. Football was a massive part of my life, and until it wasn't, it's just kind of taken from me at some point. But it's fun to pass, the knowledge and the love for the game on. Worked my way into the backside of youth sports up there too, and participated as, vice president of youth football up there, and it was a ton of fun.
So when you were in Oregon, which was awesome, it was fun going up there and visiting you.
Yeah, you were the first in the family to come up and visit. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah. No, it's just a different place, right? It's rainy, green, kind of flat, right? You had some mountains there, but
yeah, I mean one massive one, Mount Hood, right? So I would actually now, I would say Salt Lake is flat compared to Portland area, right? Really? Even though you're in the middle of these two, mountains ranges, right? But the valley is lake bed, right? So it's pretty much flat for the most part. Right. Portland is very hilly and rolling hills, and that's right, yeah. Absolutely beautiful. And yes, it does rain a lot, primarily at night, right? So it's the first 2 years that we lived up there, it was like, why does everybody complain about the rain? Like, it was just like historically dry winters and just very mild and temperate climate, right? Like 40 degrees in the wintertime for the lows, right? So it's like really not that bad. And then the third year we lived up there rolled around, and it went like 127 days of no sunshine. I'm like, okay, this is what they're talking about. Like, yeah. This is the thing. And I remember I actually had come back here for a business trip. I had business with at the time it was UDABC. They recently changed their acronym to UDABS because they're a service oriented business now. But I came back, and every time I'd come back to town, I'd try to take my mom to lunch. So we're sitting at where were we? Restaurant in the Marriott downtown, and she just finally looks at me and she's like, "You are a grumpy asshole." And I'm just like, that's uncalled for. And she's like, "I think you have seasonal effectiveness depression or whatever." And I'm like, "I don't think so. I think I'm fine." And she's like, "No, you need a vitamin D supplement." And turns out she was right. I started having to supplement with that because, I'm an outdoor guy. I want to be out in the sun. I want to be doing something, whether hiking or boating or skiing or something like. And I was at that point, I was missing the sun, right? But it's odd. Now I kind of miss the rain sometimes. So yeah. It's weird what you can get used to. I don't miss Portland traffic. That
no, the
was
traffic
terrible.
there is bad. I've actually always said the worst traffic I've ever been in is Seattle.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Portland's kind of like it, but Seattle's insane though. I mean, one freeway, a bazillion people, and the second you get off that freeway, you're in neighborhoods. So there's no getting around it.
Yeah, that's what blew me away in Portland. Like, what were the city planners thinking? I-5 condenses down to 2 lanes of traffic going each way through the center of Portland. I'm like, where it should be widening, it's narrowing. Yeah. So it's kind of wild. But they built that right on the river, and then built homes and businesses right up to the freeway. Like,
no, it's true. I mean, it's, for those who've not been to Portland, well, the old Portland was so badass.
Oh, it was great.
I mean, just the restaurants that are there, the vibe, the Keep Portland Weird mantra for everybody.
Yeah.
Now it's, homelessville basically, but
yeah, bad to the level that it sounds like there's going to be some serious changes up there. But we loved Portland when we first moved up there. I mean, we were taking advantage of all of it. Great restaurants, great bar and cocktail scene, right? It was like an adult paradise, get someone to watch the kids and go downtown Portland and bounce around, great cocktails, great food. And now you couldn't pay me to take my wife to dinner in downtown Portland. And it just, it kind of function of COVID, when everything shut down and the business people stopped going downtown, the homeless problem really became a bigger issue. Nobody cleaning up and moving them away from storefronts anymore. And I don't know, it's sad to see. We still go up. We've gone back both summers since we've lived back down here. We've been down here 2 years now. Crazy how time flies. But we've gone back both summers to let the kids see their friends and all that. And it's a different vibe. The suburbs and the little pockets around Portland proper have bounced right back and vibrant and all that again. But the downtown, man, it's sad to see. I hope that they can get it back because it was a great town while it was.
Yeah, and it's absolutely stunningly beautiful. It's just got that river that runs right through the middle of it. There's businesses and homes, like you were saying, all the way down to the water.
Oh yeah,
it's everywhere. It's just, is it a big deer when you come over top of that bridge saying "Welcome to Portland"?
Yeah, the old town Portland with the looks
flashing
like a John Deere sign there.
Yeah. No, I mean, I told people for years and years and years, like, I love Portland. People be like, "You like Portland? Like, why Portland?" I'm like, the food's good. Like, it's just fantastic there. And then, you were obviously living there, and Garrett, my other friend Garrett, was living there. Yeah,
which I was when I finally last year at Lake Powell got to spend some time with Garrett, and I'm like, man, you're like one of my guys. Yeah. And we never got together or anything while he was living in Portland at the same time as us.
Yeah. You weren't too far, right? Were you 30 minutes apart?
Yeah.
Something like that. Enough to do once a month.
Yeah. But it's one of those functions, and I try to pass this to my kids now. It's like, just say hi to people and talk to people, and you find out that you have a lot in common with most people. Yeah. And that's the thing. I wish that I had known Garrett at the time, because I think that we'd have had a lot of fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So what was it like, difference working business in Oregon versus working in Utah?
Oh, night and day. So what I do here in the state is very restrictive, right? We have a very clear set of rules to follow. Almost none of those rules exist in Oregon, right? All the way down to how you interact. So Oregon is also a controlled state, right? There's a liquor control, just as same as Utah. But interactions with them, they truly, they feel like a partner of yours in the business, right? They want you to be just as successful as they're trying to be, because it benefits both, right? But in Oregon, I can go to lunch with the purchasing director for the Oregon Liquor Control Commission. It's Liquor and Cannabis Commission now. There's recreational marijuana is legal up there, and the Liquor Commission regulates that as well. Sampling and tasting is a massive difference, right? So you go in, and right now what I'm doing is all very high-end spirits, right? And we send our salespeople out, and they've got to walk into a bar and restaurant owner operator and here in Utah and say, hey, I'd love you to carry this. This is what we do with it. This is the value proposition to you. Here's how you make money. And then, trust me, it's really good, right? And in most instances, what we're selling is at least double the price of our competitor, right? We have very high quality, high-end spirits. Where in Oregon, I'd walk in, and in the same meeting, like, you pull a bottle out and you can give them a half-ounce sample and they can taste it right there. And so that was, for me, was the massive difference. And then the promotional activity around it, right?
Did that sampling help the sell?
100%.
Okay. It's a big component of it.
It's a massive component. It's with, all the local distillers here in Utah and really the major, Southern Wine and Spirits and RNDC here. I think the one thing that all of us should align on is to lobby to allow, proper and responsible sampling, right? There's really no impact and issue of over consuming, right? You're sitting with a business person, right? Small business owner to say, hey, I'd like you to buy this, for us, like scandalous whiskey, right? We're twice the price of the competitor brand, and it makes it a lot easier to just show them, like, this is why we're twice the price. Like, here, taste it. And they taste it, they buy it 100%. I watch them come into the distillery. If they taste scandalous, they buy scandalous. Yeah. No questions asked. So massive component. And I think that Utah needs that ability, right? Responsible sampling. The state of Idaho has just brought it into the fold, right? They're all state-owned liquor stores up there, just like they are here. They've started a sampling program in the liquor stores where consumers can come in and small producers like us can be standing there at a table saying, here's all of our stuff. Let me tell you about it. Which ones would you like to taste and try? So, yeah. But it is a big function of it.
Yeah, it is interesting, when you go to like the Total Wines and Spirits. Man,
what an operation those guys have. Like, they are the best at it. They are a machine.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's fun going there because they you can sample all sorts of stuff. I think they'll actually pull bottles off and give you some, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, depending on what it is, I'm sure.
Yeah. They're incredible, though. You go in there and they have their private label of all their own stuff, right? And you'll go in there, and I saw it over and over when I was selling Absolute. Right? You'd go in there, and here I am in there on behalf of Absolute, and I'm looking around and I'm noticing, like, wow, Absolute's kind of down there on that knee level shelf. And so it's standing there as, the business suits will, right? Like, we're standing there complaining about where we are on the shelf, and here comes, the guy who's responsible for, maintaining the vodka section, and, hey, what are you guys doing? Oh, we're looking at Absolute. Oh, yeah, that's great stuff. Have you tried this? And they like sell you right into their own private label, right? Like,
yeah.
It's a brilliant model, and they do very well at it.
Yeah. And their stores are massive.
Just
massive. So, because being in Utah, right, everyone knows Lee's Liquor.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Lee's is kind of the same model, right? Just only in Nevada?
Yeah, just in Nevada, and I can say, I don't know a ton about their business, but I do know that they will not be beat on price. They are not going to lose because somebody has a better price than them.
Yeah.
And then, strategy, right? Mesquite opened the store in Wendover. Like, they know who their customer is. Yeah. For sure.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. Their customer has Utah license plates.
Which is funny, right? Because what's the rule? You're not allowed to bring more than 4 bottles across state line? 5 liters or something like that?
Yeah, it's at a liter level. It's not necessarily the number of bottles. It's the total volume of liquid. Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably the same rules as an airplane.
Yeah, I think it's actually only 2 liters, but yeah. I'd have to double check.
I'll tell you something funny. I don't know who taught me this or told me this. I should probably give you credit for it, but when I was out of town, if you want to ever ship it back to Utah, right? The law can turn their microphones off for that. Skip this part. We always say, like, hey, I'm sending home spaghetti sauce, right?
Spaghetti sauce, man. Put a box of macaroni in there, too, so it shakes a little bit, yeah.
And so it's funny, I was in Kentucky, and I think I was with Michelle. I went and bought a couple specialty bourbons. I was going to give them to some people, that we don't have here. Excuse me. Jeez, cut that out. Anyways, I was in Kentucky. I was getting these specialty bourbons.
Right.
And I just walked into a FedEx with the thing open because I'm used to like showing them what's in there, right?
Oh yeah.
And the lady like looks in there. She like looks at me, looks in there, looks at me. She's like, "This is alcohol." I go, "Yeah, just 4 bottles, should be blah blah blah." Dude, like it was nothing. And she like scoots the box to me. She's like, "I cannot ship this." And I was like, "What do you mean you can't ship this? I ship this stuff all the time." And she's just like freaking railing me, and I'm like, "Oh." I'm like, oh yeah, what am I talking about? Never mind. I don't actually ship this stuff. I normally put it in my airplane bag. And she's like, uh-huh. And I just grabbed the box and walked out. And Michelle was like, what was that? And I was like, oh, you're actually not allowed to ship the stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, FedEx definitely, they won't do it. Even, if we back up to when I was running Southern here at the time, we didn't have an office. So my house was an office, right? I had to set up with Sandy City, had to, alcohol-oriented business license and all these things. And we were legit. Suppliers could, at that point, technically send sample bottles directly to me. And most of my supplier partners shipped exclusively with FedEx, right?
Yeah.
Get a great corporate rate and all these things. And my FedEx driver that would deliver to my house at the time just had a personal stance against it, that it was not legal. And he refused to deliver. So I contact FedEx, and I got to the point where I was like, I'm sick of driving down here to pick this up. Like, all of this, here's the paperwork, here's the license, like all of this is legit. And the driver had his personal grievance that no, and he would not leave it. And it, it would show up labeled, this contains alcohol, this, all these things. And he just, made his own decision on the fly. So we switched to UPS.
Right.
UPS guy's like, deuces, I don't care what's in that box.
Yeah, exactly.
Said to deliver it here it is. See ya.
That blows my mind that people would care.
Yeah.
So one thing I think people will find interesting, especially if they're not in the spirits world, can you explain what the 3-tiered system is?
Yeah. I'll try to put it in the simplest terms possible. So since Prohibition ended, it's been set into a system where you have 3 tiers, right? So you have your supplier producer, top tier. You have broker, wholesaler, second tier. Retailer, on-premise account is your 3rd tier. So there's 3 tiers that the product goes through before it gets to the end consumer. And by law, you can't operate in more than 1 tier at a time, right? So there's been a couple of companies that I think have done it well to try to massage those lines. Bacardi being one of them, and aligning all of their business with Southern Glazers. And it was really an interesting format while we were there, because a lot of talent sharing, right? Like, we'd put people over into Southern would put people at Bacardi, and it was really kind of became a way to, finish off maybe people's gaps in their careers. But it also was a way to, maybe have a little bit more control in more than 1 tier at a time, right? You could control your pricing a little bit better. You could control when you launch something and where and how it's all set out. But yeah, the 3-tier system has existed since Prohibition ended, and it really is supplier to wholesaler to retailer.
Right. And that, what's the reason for it?
Make sure everybody gets paid, and there can be multiple stops along the way to pay taxes on things, right? Like, there's federal excise tax at all 3 levels.
Yeah. Oh, is there? All 3 levels, huh?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So like here, right, in Utah, while I was with Bacardi, everything that's sitting in that warehouse down there at the state of Utah from Bacardi is sitting in Belmont, right? So at that point, I still owned all the product, and I was still paying proof gallons federal excise tax on everything while it sat there. Once the DABS ships it to one of their stores, they purchase at that point, and every Monday, got an ACH for whatever was shipped out of their warehouses. Then the state owns it, and while they own it, they have to pay a tax on it. Then when it gets to the bar and restaurant, they get to pay tax on it too. So I would imagine the 3-tier system was to make sure that they could pay taxes times 3.
Yeah. So remember when they threw all that alcohol away, the liquor stores?
Mm-hmm.
What was the deal behind that? Because that was big news here, because it was kind of like, as the taxpayer, it's kind of like our product, right? I mean, I know we're selling it to ourselves, but they changed like the alcohol level or something like that.
So I'm not sure what you're referencing there, but I am right. Just months ago when Russia moved on Ukraine, right? A lot of liquor boards across the country put a hold on Russian products, right? And Utah was no different there, right? I think Governor Cox even said that he was going to actively look for Ukrainian products. I'm like, I don't know why that's a good use of your time, but whatever. But in that model, the product that was being destroyed at that point was Belmont product. It was never owned. The state of Utah didn't own it at that point, right? Now, they may have had to move it across the line to technically destroy it, but I'd be skeptical that anything really got destroyed other than what made sense to be marketable, and the rest would have been picked up and returned to the supplier.
Now, didn't the state of Utah change the alcohol level in beer?
They did.
The
Yeah.
ABV.
Yeah, moved it up from. So on the cans, it'll show 5%, but I think that measure is by volume.
Yeah.
Right. And we were 3.2 beer by weight. So in the increase at that, it puts to like 4% by weight, what equals about 5% volume in a 12-ounce can.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm referring to. When they made that change, they got rid of all the 3.2.
But that 3.2 beer would have never been at the state, right? The 3.2 beer is what I would have been delivering off of a beer truck when I worked for Carlson.
Oh, okay.
Right. So all the keg beer at the time, anything you got on tap in a bar or restaurant, was 3.2 or below, and then all the whatever we delivered from Carlson or General delivered, that stuff was all the 3.2 beer. The state of Utah never owned any of that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh well. So let's talk about our company a little bit.
Yeah.
Why? I mean, you're working at Bacardi. Awesome job, awesome company. There's tons of perks and all sorts of fun that happens over there.
Yeah.
Also some bad stuff. It's corporate America, right?
Yeah, corporate America at its finest, right? I mean, the company's great, privately held, family owned, right? Well, largest family owned liquor company in the world, but very corporate model within.
On the inside.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So our company, we're basically finding people that already have existing brands, and we're bringing spirits to their branding.
Exactly.
And we have the opportunity to be a massive market disruptor. And what's your thoughts on that?
Well, there's a couple schools of thought, right? You can enter a marketplace and you can just outwork everybody in the marketplace, and you'll be the top performer, right? If you want to do it the same way everybody else is doing it, then you just better work harder than everybody else. Or you can take our thoughts here, and that's come in and disrupt. Do something different, provide a service to people that already have brand equity established and brand awareness, and amplify that for them, which is exactly the base of what Free Flow Brands will become, right? It's a way to amplify the efforts of someone's current marketing campaign and ideas. We're just taking it to the next level for people that understand the value proposition that's in it for them to, create their own legacy brand.
Yeah. And the thing that's interesting too, because, we've talked for years about creating our own brand,
right?
And kind of launching it out there. It's a lot of money. It's a ton of work. And a lot of that is you got to distill your own stuff.
Yep.
You don't have to, but if you want to be a true legacy brand, you got to distill your own stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And, we're talking, realistically, we're probably 20 mil, right? To really launch properly with a distillery. And
that might be high, but it's probably not too far off, right? Yeah. You could get it done for a lot less, but you'll have a lot of sleepless nights trying to rub things together. Right. To do it right, you'd want a proper raise for sure.
Yeah, and I think for me, one of the things that's important about a legacy brand is that you have a distillery that people come to and visit, right? So you got to have either land or kind of like High West did with the Park City, distillery.
That
thing was
what
cool.
A beautiful build out they did up there.
Yeah,
insane, right? Really set the bar high for what everyone else needs to aspire to.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, and they got paid later for it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see what Constellation's doing with the brand moving forward, right?
Yeah.
Like putting the little distillery from Park City on the global stage.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's I think Yellowstone helped that.
For sure.
People love that stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, for us, we take, I think what we're starting off with here is we've cut out a lot of the headache in the production side.
Absolutely.
We're paying for it, right? Obviously
it comes at a cost,
everywhere.
right? Efficiencies are coming at a cost for us there.
Yeah. But we have, we will, I mean, in theory, we really have unlimited production because we can move and we can move quickly and we can take brands and launch them and get them out there. Because really, what I realized with all the spirit stuff, kind of going back to our conversation earlier about how you should just pepper you with questions.
Yeah.
Is what I really realized is because it's like, well, what's the difference between these 10 different brands? The actual juice, right? So take the labels off, blind taste test, right?
Right.
It's kind of the thing. And it's really hard to tell some of the stuff, especially when you get to the ultra premium, right? I mean, it's all good, at that level. And then it's like, well, what does it really boil down to? And it's like brand. Like 100% brand,
Brand.
And we've talked about this a lot where, we had, historically you would have a guy, if he was a Jim Beam guy, it's because his dad was, and his dad was, and his dad was.
Right.
And now we have a generation here, probably two generations, 20s and 30-year-olds that they do not have brand loyalty like that.
No.
Like, yeah, my dad likes Beam, but I like freaking this and this, and tomorrow I might like this, and I'll move on this quick because what does it matter? I want to drink, and it's like, I think the big companies like Bacardi and Brown Forman and those guys, like they almost don't know what to do with it. I mean, is that kind of accurate? Like how fast you got to move on branding?
Yeah, I think so. Those bigger companies, they do a lot of interesting things, right? They seed smaller distilleries, and it's more beneficial instead of cranking up your R&D and trying to create something new. Maybe you support a small guy along the way and being that seat to be first right of refusal. A perfect example on that would be Stillhouse. Bacardi was, funding behind the scenes to do their raise for them. And as they grew their line, Bacardi ultimately comes back and, buys the whole thing and keeps on the CFO and CEO, and they operate the company, and it just comes into the fold of a Bacardi brand. But yeah, it works out pretty well that way. But it is ever dynamic and moving, right? Our current consumer, right, legal drinking age to 35, right? Those are the ones that everybody in the spirits business is after, right? Yeah. And really probably in most consumer goods products, right? And they are hard to understand what they're going to want today, and do they still want that tomorrow? And that's where Free Flow comes in to, be nimble and understand everything behind the scenes to make it happen. So when that next opportunity pops up, we spin it up real quick and get it going.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we've got some stuff in the burner, which we're not going to talk about, but we will. Just won't be for like 6 or 8 more months.
Yeah,
and I mean, it's to me, it's like really, really exciting because I feel like we are nimble. I feel like we can really attack markets in very, very quickly.
Yep.
And so, and the more partnerships, and we're new at it, right? We're new. Well, our concept's new. You're not new at any of this.
Yeah.
But as we add more and more brands, I mean, it's just going to be rinse and repeat these things over and over and over again, and then quickly exit them.
Exactly. I do think we're going to stub our toes a couple times, right? There's probably a few blind corners we still have to walk around and, maybe get smacked in the mouth a little bit and realize, okay, that we don't do it that way anymore. Yeah. But, I'm so pumped about what we have going on. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, in theory, with how efficient we run, anybody could come to us with any idea and we can launch it.
Yep.
Which you just can't do that.
No.
People off the street cannot go find a distillery, have them work with them. It requires a lot of capital. They don't know how to get it listed. They don't know how to do it legally. There's all sorts of red tape with it.
Right.
But with us, it's like, yeah, I mean, you can be a wealthy gentleman, and you want a pallet of your own, scotch. Sure.
Yeah, we'll make it happen for you.
Branded, labeled, sitting in your freaking garage, wherever you want it.
Yeah.
Hand it out to your friends for Christmas gifts, and
yeah, exclusivity, right? something nobody else has.
Yeah, for sure.
That was the original concept, right? And no, I like it. And you're absolutely right. You know, if you and I decided today, throwing in all the chips, let's open a distillery, minimum 2 years of red tape to get through to do that, right? You know, I look at Matt and Steph over at Clearwater, you know, those two are some scrappers. I think they got it done in like 22 months. Yeah. Like really, like hats off to the tenacity that they showed to spin up that distillery. Then at the end of those 22 months, they opened the doors and COVID, right? Like, I mean, imagine your body of work and then they close the world down on you, you know? But again, they didn't back down from a challenge, turned right around and figured out how to go direct to consumer and spun up that model real quick. And they actually, I think Matt really authored most of the code for how the package agencies at the local distilleries can do curbside service, because there really was some ambiguity around it. And Matt instantly knew that, hey, I need to be able to offer an avenue for people to purchase. So he put together curbside way of doing things, and the state kind of balked at it for him, and then he sent it on, and that became kind of the statute of how everybody does it now. Yeah. So,
good for them. That's cool. It's also fun seeing a small distillery. You know, when people see, I don't think a lot of people that I know have actually gone to distilleries.
Yeah. Today's a great day to come down to Clearwater. We're just finished up fermenting the next batch of our Lawrence crafted spirit, right? Can't call it a rum, essentially, because while it is a cane base, right, with panela sugar, we do have some apple cider in the mash. So it's not technically rum, so it finds itself in a weird spot, or finds itself on the shelf in a weird spot. Usually next to Jägermeister. It's like that's not even close, but it's, you know, category wise, we're crafted spirit. But we just finished the fermentation on the next batch of Lawrence, and Nick's down there doing the strip runs to convert it from the fermented liquid into the first, you know, shelf stable distilled spirit. But the whole distillery will smell like, when we go down to your mom and dad's house on Christmas, and your mom makes that, like, leave it in the fridge overnight, French toast casserole. And it's like, the whole distillery smells like that. Like, it smells like Christmas in there when Lawrence is running through the still, because it just picks up, you know, there's cinnamon and there's vanilla and all this, and it just smells like Christmas in there. So today's a great day to stop by the distillery.
No, that's dope. You know, another thing that's cool about stopping by distilleries, which is why, you know, one day we're going to own a badass one somewhere in the world. We'll figure it out. Yeah. But they're perfect for, like, date nights. They're perfect. Even the High West one, I'm trying to remember. Can you take kids to the High West one?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't.
I cannot remember if you can or you can't.
Yeah.
We've been up there a few times for brunch into the, you know, the new one at the Blue Sky Ranch.
Up at Blue Sky. Yeah, gorgeous.
We've always been with adults, but I feel like I've seen kids there. But
yeah. We used to do brunch at the wineries a lot in Oregon, and definitely kid friendly, right? Yeah. One of our favorite was Stoller. We loved Stoller Winery. Just absolutely gorgeous property. Cool little frisbee golf course set up, right? So it's like, all right, boys, tear it up. And Sherry and I sit there and, you know, share a bottle of wine, maybe two.
Yeah.
You know, it's a great way to spend an afternoon.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love the, we were talking about this yesterday, I think, or the day before. Like, I just love the flipping playground crap they have going on in Texas.
Oh, yeah.
Slap a playground down, get a couple food truck-esque kind of food things in there, and then just a whole bunch of spirits and beer.
Yeah. And
people just go down there and hang out there all day, and their kids play, and it's, like, super community-oriented. And
that's the piece, right? Like, you go in, you need to function as part of the community, right? You raise the level of what's going on in the community, for sure.
Yeah. It kind of makes me wonder. I live in Bluffdale, and I'm like, I wonder how much convincing it would take to put a distillery there, or where we'd even put it.
Right.
But, you know, if the community really got around it, I mean, it provides a lot of stuff. I mean, they provide good jobs, well-paying jobs.
Good jobs, and distilleries pay a lot of taxes.
Yeah. And they're beautiful.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh yeah, down what Matt and Steph have at Clearwater. I mean, so I met Matt and Steph the day that you and I walked in there was second week in August to look at production capacity from them, and I just was taken aback at the scale of the operation down there, and just really I've been in a lot of distilleries, right, all over the globe. You know, some better than others, and I was really blown away at what they were doing there in this little distillery, first ever distillery in Utah County, right? Pleasant Grove, Utah, Clearwater Distilling, you know, come see us.
Yeah.
Open 7 days a week, right? You can go there on Sunday and buy a bottle of vodka, right? So
Which is wild.
It definitely is. And that's another one you got to tip the hat to, you know, Mr. Perkins at High West, because he really lobbied to make that happen.
Yeah.
But no, distillery, date night at the distillery, definitely fun, right? Distilleries are a bit of education, bit of history, bit of science, all wrapped into one. And then, you know, like everything we do at Clearwater is batch based, right? So it's agricultural too, right? We're not blending to make things taste the same. Every batch we're using the skill of Nick to take, you know, the agricultural products that we have available to make and follow the recipe. So it's kind of cool. Batch made products that are, you know, hand labeled, all of it, and you know, it's fun. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. There's a lot of fun to it in the fact that there's a lot of art. There's a lot of art to it, you know, like between the bottle and the cap and the labeling and like the way your juice looks inside the bottle, and just like there's a lot of thought that goes into this stuff.
A ton of it. Yeah.
What's your favorite label that you've ever seen? I know mine right off the top of my head.
You know, I think I'm partial to the Tibetan honeybee on Patron.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think that, you know, one, Patron Spirits Company, such a cool brand and proposition, but, you know, that honeybee has a lot of symbolism for Jean-Paul DeJorio, the gentleman that created the brand. And then it's become iconic, right? Like you recognize it like somebody recognizes, you know, the Apple logo.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The label I like the best is Jägermeister.
Yeah.
Jaeger has like a college, you know, Jaeger shot, or what's the one with Red Bull? Jaeger bombs.
Yeah.
Like it's like one of my favorite shots. I can't remember it. But it's kind of like got this party scene to it, and like all this like, you know, kind of like, oh, fun, or, you know, people will be like, oh shit, Jaeger, I can't handle another shot of that,
yeah.
You know. But when you grab that bottle and you actually look at the label, it is well done.
Yeah.
It's textured, it's got colors to it, it's got details to it. Like it'd be interesting to actually talk to the people that really created that.
Yeah.
You know, plus the bottle, right? The bottle, it's green bottle, kind of square. I mean, you can see a bottle of Jaeger from a million miles away and know, oh, that's a bottle of Jaeger.
Yeah.
You know, there's some bottles of vodka and tequila. It's like,
well, a lot of them are using the same exact bottle, right? And just slapping a different label on them.
Yeah.
I mean, there's only so many bottle manufacturers in the world.
Correct. That is correct.
Yeah. So, no. And then, you know, a long time at Bacardi, so I do like that bat logo.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, the bat logo.
That's pretty cool.
So at Bacardi, what's you guys' biggest brands over there? Because I think what people don't understand is, you know, they're like, I was at Bacardi, and they just go, oh, you sold rum. And it's like, no.
Yeah, so definitely a lot of rum, right? You know, the king of rums and the rum of kings, right? Most awarded rums of all time. But outside of that, you know, Bacardi owns Grey Goose. Bacardi now owns Patron. Bacardi owns probably my favorite little tequila to drink, Cazadores. Dewar's, and then all of the single malt distilleries that were Stephanie McLeod, who's the master distiller and blender at Dewar's, all of the single malts that she uses to blend and make Dewar's. Bacardi owns all those distilleries as well. Martini and Rossi, Bombay Sapphire, So very, very wide portfolio of primarily premium brands, right?
Yeah.
So they own Angel's Envy, which is, I mean, come on, what a great whiskey.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, great company, great book of brands.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And it is definitely more than just rum. What amazes me, right? Like, every time you have to do something where they want to know where you work, or like you'd have to give your email to somebody, and I would give my email at Bacardi.com, and they'd be like, "What's that?" Like, or they'd say, "Like the rum company," and part of me would be like, "Well, what other company would there be?" Right?
Yeah.
Like, it was interesting that sometimes people are like, "Oh, Bacardi, can you spell that?" Like, well, one, it's very much spelled phonetically.
Yeah.
And no tricks in that one, but
Yeah.
it never stopped amazing me that some people would just be like the rum company? Like, no, the rum company.
Rum company.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're iconic, man. I mean, it's actually kind of hard I can't even. I mean, I could name some other rums, but it seems like a lot of the other rums are all gimmicky, right? When it comes to straight up, who's their biggest competitor actually? Malibu, maybe.
Not even close. I mean, in the rum game, I mean, premiumization is happening in all segments, right? So there's a lot of high-end rums that are on the scene. But if you're talking just straight up Bacardi Superior, right? The clear rum and the clear bottle, and then the Bacardi flavor lineup, I would say that the competitor would be Smirnoff vodka. Right?
Oh, really?
Like, yeah, that's because at that point you're competing for the same consumers, right?
Right.
So, and there's not another rum at scale to compete with. Like, Crucian, they do a good job. Don Q, they make some great rums, and they're on Puerto Rico as well. It's kind of like the neighbors on the island. The mixology scene really gravitates to Don Q. Very mixable products there as well. So, but yeah, I'd say while I was running the business for Bacardi, I was always keeping an eye on what Smirnoff was doing.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Interesting. That makes sense. So in your roles, I think one thing that's funny too, well, not funny, but like one thing I realized about your role is actually like very data driven.
100%.
I mean, you're just sitting there crunching all sorts of numbers all day and price points, and which, if anyone that understands like large scale business, I mean, that is where the money's made.
Yeah.
It's understanding your customer, understanding where they buy at, understanding each individual small market.
Yeah. And I had, pretty astute at crunching the data and getting to the answers I need. And then, lifelong salesman. So also pretty astute at making that data make the point I want for me as well. But I had this partner at Bacardi, we have revenue growth management team and, function of the finance department and all that. But my buddy Mike over there was like just super genius and just like could slay it with the data, right? I'd go to him and say, this is what I want to do. This is the volume that's going to be associated with it. Will this work? And like 30 seconds later, he'd be like, yeah, that'll be profitable. Pull the trigger, do it. Right. So I, a lot of times got a lot of credit for these ideas, but if I didn't have my man, Mike, and if, Mike Moran, if you happen to hear this, I'm talking about you. Yeah. Like the dude was unbelievable and, great partner to have in that, because, you get into your silo, right? Bacardi is a global company, but I ran Pacific Northwest states, very data heavy. All of them were control states. So I had not only my data, but I had my competitors' data, which is the beautiful part about doing business in the control states is that NABCA board collects everybody's data and you can buy it. And we bought and had access to it. And it definitely drove a lot of the decision making. And then quite honestly, the way we really monetized the business on the back end, during my time at Bacardi, we were a pretty nimble team, and then we had our brokerage partners at Southern Glazers, and we had 2 dedicated people just on our business on the streets, selling just Bacardi's brands and Heaven Hills brands, right? So we utilize that data because 1,500 plus licensees in Utah. 2 people can't go and call on all of them. So we really wanted to go narrow and deep. The fish where the fish are, so to say, mantra. But that was all data driven, and a little bit of a junkie to that data these days because now over at Clearwater we're not at the level where we can pay for the competitive data, and it's like losing your right arm almost, right? Like you're just like, oh man, it was such a function of how we did things, But
it was nice to have that stuff.
Absolutely.
Well, and I shouldn't even say it's nice. I mean, it's one of the ways that we're going to drive traffic, or drive the brands that we deal with.
It's mission critical, honestly. Like it's something at scale that you need to have because your competitors do, right? Right. And, if you want to make waves and disrupt, and like our strategy here is to come in, focus brand, build it and sell it, right? And you need to understand the data and where those opportunities are, because you need to get big enough that, one of the big guys gets sick of you, pulling the scraps off the table, and they just say, oh, well, the hell with this. Let me just buy you.
Right.
Like that's the idea.
And when we get to that point, we need that data so we know what our business is worth.
100%.
Or each brand is worth, I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've given a couple speeches or been on panels or whatever, right? And people ask me how to invest, and the first thing I always tell them is you got to learn how to evaluate a business's value.
Yeah.
People go, oh, okay. I'm like, you're not listening to what I'm saying. Stocks are the easiest thing in the world if you understand what the value of that stock actually is. And if it's underneath what it's currently selling, then you don't buy it until it goes down, right? Or if it's worth way more, than it's currently selling at, then buy it at what it's currently selling at. It's the same thing with small business. If you had a banana shack, right, and the thing makes you $100,000 a year, you're not going to go spend $10 million buying that friggin' thing. It'll take you forever to get your return on investment. But some guy wants out of it, he'll sell it to you for $160,000, and you're like, well, okay, my horizon to get my money back on this might be 3 years by the time we do this, and if I put a little bit more cash in and we do 2 banana shacks, then we're off and rolling.
All of a sudden, Michelle's running banana shacks.
Yeah,
she would love that, by the way.
Yeah, she actually might. Yeah. Except for the talking to people part.
Hey, she talks to me, man.
Oh, she talks to those she likes. No, she always busts my balls because, I try, whenever we get in an Uber, I always try and put her in the front seat just so she has to talk to the driver.
Oh, I can see her skin crawling from here on that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, she won't do it. She won't even get in the front seat. She's like, I don't know how you do it. And I'm just like, I can't sit there in silence, man. I can, but I can't, Right. I just feel like these dudes are just driving all day. It just feels a tad bit impersonal if you're not like, hey, bro, what's up? Yeah. I don't know. I'm weird.
Nah. That's fun. You're just Mark, man. That's you. Don't ever lose it.
Yeah. Well, that's true. So, my friend, thank you for coming on the podcast for your first episode.
Yeah, this was great.
We'll be doing many, many, many more of these.
Yeah.
So I'm excited.
I appreciate the time here today.
Oh, yeah. I appreciate you listening to it. Actually, you're one of my biggest supporters in it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. When I heard Uncle Ray's voice on there, as 42-year-old man, I still call him Uncle Ray. Yeah. But I think he likes that. I can't tell sometimes, but
of course he loves it.
Yeah, I think he's a little upset with me right now because I keep finishing off my basement, and he keeps offering. I'm like, I'm not going to work you to death, Uncle Ray. He's like, oh, I want to come up and do it.
Oh, and he needs a hobby bad. Please bring him up. He needs a hobby bad. He just loves that stuff.
Yeah. He came out and watched one of Connor's lacrosse games this year. It was kind of cool to see him up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it is fun, dude. It was actually fun to see when I went to the one game, dude. It was cold as freak. I'm not prepared for the coldness, but it's fun seeing Connor. He's a young man playing with a lot bigger boys, and he's good.
Yeah, he loves that game, man. Yeah. He loves that game. So,
well, who's the guy? So tell me the story real quick before we end this. Which friend was it that he was bashing the lacrosse balls off his head?
Man, so that's my buddy Brandon Webster. Okay. I actually had lunch with Brandon on Tuesday, and that came up. So Connor shoots pretty hard, right? Like north of 90 miles an hour. the reason it came up with Brandon was last week, Connor played against West Jordan High School, and his first shot on goal just ripped in there, and he scored the rest of the game. I think he scored 4 or 5 more times in that game. The goalie ducked every time Connor shot the ball at him because it comes out of the stick hard. And I'm telling this to Brandon, and he's like, oh yeah, I know. So the backstory on that is Brandon, he and I have worked together in the wine and spirits business since Connor was about 2. And Brandon's son Brody was 2 at the same time. So Connor and Brody have kind of grown up being buddies, and they were all over at our house, and it was before we had started finishing the basement, and I had just put batting cage nets up everywhere and put a lacrosse rebounder down there and a lacrosse goal down there, and Connor and Grayson had their own private shooting range, and we were listening to some vinyl records and drinking wine, and Brandon decided that he wanted to get into goal with Connor shooting, and I'm like, this is probably not a good idea, and I recommend you put a helmet on, because so Connor was kind of goofing with him a bit, scoring behind the back and all these things, and then Brandon's like, no, I want you to really shoot, and Connor shot a ball at him so hard that it was already in the back of the net before Brandon had even moved. And then, Brandon adjusts and says, I think I could do better. Now I know what to look for, kind of thing. So again, just fires one right at him. And then the third time he did it, he put it right off of the face mask on the helmet that Brandon was wearing. And then that's at the point where I'm like, okay, this is done. Everybody out. Somebody's going to get hurt. And then Brandon decided at that point to take it more hockey style and threw the gloves down and pulled Connor's shirt over his head. And it was maybe too much wine that night, and Connor put a ball right off of Brandon's forehead. It's a damn good thing he had that helmet on.
Oh yeah. Well, and a lacrosse ball is hard, right?
Yeah.
It's like a baseball,
a dense little rubber ball that.
Yeah. I'm telling you, I don't want to take a shot from Connor.
No,
there's no way.
No, those kids that stand there and play goal, there's a couple kids. The kid that is the goalie for Connor's club team. He's unbelievable. The stops and just his hand-eye coordination and his reaction time. It's insane. But you couldn't pay me enough to stand there in that goal. And then these kids just get out there with a chest pad on, a cup, and a helmet. And I'm like, I would want more padding than that.
Yeah, you want to look like a hockey guy.
Exactly. That's what I would want to look like out there.
Yeah. But lacrosse is fun, man.
Yeah,
it's cool. It's a sport that we did not have.
No, and I would have loved to play it. It looks so much fun, and what a fun sport for the family to go watch, right? Because we spend most of the summer, as traveling to these tournaments, and tournament days are fun, right? Yeah. And your travel team becomes like your extended family. So got great friends with the parents out there, and it's a lot of fun. I'll be sad when it's over, that's for sure. Yeah. Yeah, when the kids are out of the house, man, that stuff obviously, it's hitting me harder recently, thinking man, time does not stop. It marches on. Yes, it does.
It marches on.
Yeah, time's undefeated.
Well, hey, I kind of feel like we're halfway through our careers, probably, right, before we're done. Yeah. What would be your advice to someone, I guess it doesn't matter where they're at in their career, but if they're interested in the spirits world, give me your 2 minutes of advice on why it's a great career.
So I knew you were going to ask this question, so I obviously put a lot of thought into it, because I hear you ask everyone. And for me, I'll give you the advice on what I think motivates and drives me, and then how that can pivot into the spirits business. But it took me a while to understand why I was going to work, right? And obviously it's because you have bills to pay and you got to do things. But my real motivation for what I do in life is around Sherry and Grayson and Connor. They're my favorite people, and I want to find a way to be with them more, right? And that's what drives me every day to get out and go hustle and make things happen, is because I really love being with my family, and living in Portland without a support group, they're my people. They're my favorite ones to be around. knowing that's my goal, right? You have to have a goal that you're striving towards, and then just get up and go do it, man. Like, you're going to get knocked down and you have to bounce right back up and just keep moving forward. So that would be my advice to really anyone is, know what your goal is and work towards it every day. Sometimes you have setbacks and sometimes you have home runs. In the spirits business, one, don't get in it because you think you're going to get rich overnight. It's a lot of damn work, and there's a lot of repetitive processes. But it translates into the same thing. You can go out and you can hustle and you can build a career. You're gonna meet an amazing network of people. It's not a massive business, right? It's financially massive, but there's not a whole lot of layers between things, right? Like my time at Bacardi, you're talking directly with the North American president. You've got direct access to Bacardi's global CEO, direct access into the people leading these massive wine and spirits wholesalers, right? And then the experiences. Right, you're going to travel the world. You're going to see things that most people don't get to see. You're going to have great dinners, great all of that stuff, right? Because there's unlimited marketing budgets within these companies. So it is a great place to build a career and increase your network. And you taught me a bit on that to where nobody's getting there by themselves, right? You're going to need some support along the way and some mentorship and having a network of people. And I think you do this really well. It's like, you have a core group of people, and we're spinning up a new crazy idea. It's like, hey, unbiased, what do you think on this? You got to find people that are willing to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Perfect.
That's it.
Yeah. Obviously, I agree with that. No, I've always, and to end the podcast, I'll just tell you, I've always admired the way that you've done business. I think you've done a really good job of becoming an expert in that world. You and I both know there's people in that industry, right, that don't know what the hell they're doing. They get into positions because they're either probably a little bit likable, or they don't have a better
yes man.
Yeah, or a straight yes man. A lot of ass kissing, that kind of stuff, right? But it's not hard to tell with you that you're an expert.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. I'll take this opportunity to tell you, man, I love you.
Love you too, man. Family is everything to us. Like the stuff we have going on now, like getting to spend more and more time with you. That's I love
awesome.
It. Yeah,
we're gonna ride this bad boy into the sunset for sure.
Your brothers, your sister, your mom and dad, like they're all part of the tribe that made me who I am.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and it's interesting too, because I've always looked up to you. We're 1 year apart.
Yeah,
and it's it was awesome.
Yeah, but for like 10 years, I've had to physically look up at you now, though. Somehow you and my brother became like these monsters.
I don't know how he beat me, man. He got to like an inch taller than me, maybe two. The guy's a giant.
He is.
So, well, awesome. Well, hey, again, thanks for coming. We're going to do this again and again.
Perfect. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks for listening to the President McCormack Podcast, brought to you by McCormack Foundation, Saxton Fund, ADP Lemco, and Professional Floor Systems. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and keep up with Mark on Instagram @President McCormack.